like to give everybody out there listening a very warm White Cat welcome, because you're tuned in to the White Cat Outdoors podcast.
Hey everybody, episode 38, White Cat Outdoors podcast. I'll be your host tonight, Tom, and also co-hosting with me tonight, we got my older brother, Nick.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
And my younger brother, Luke.
How's it going?
And tonight we have a very special episode. Super excited about it. Luke just got back from a week-long trip to Alaska salmon fishing. So in this episode, we're going to cover basically that trip, how it went, what he caught, how he caught them, all kinds of good stuff. So we'll just pass the ball over to Luke and get a little rundown of his little stay up there, and some say the last frontier.
Yeah, take us from the top.
Well, as Tom mentioned, I just got back from Alaska, and actually I've been back for a couple weeks now. And before I left, I had my buddies Bailey and Anthony on here, and we talked about what was gonna happen in the trip and what we expected, and so it'll be kind of cool to be able to recap with you guys about how the trip actually went. But we're gonna fast forward here real quick. While I was in Alaska, I actually got appendicitis and have been laid up and went to the hospital for a few weeks. So I haven't really been able to fish much since I got back from Alaska. But we're getting ready to get back into the swing of things. And
I think let's just start with the appendicitis story, because that's kind of wild.
Well,
it's like what, day 8 into your 10-day trip?
We'll get that out of the way, and
it's best to start at the end
and then work back with throwing in parts from the middle. But anyways, so like last 2 days I was in Alaska, started to get a little stomach ache, and just figured it was from a diet change. I was eating a lot of salmon up there, and my whole schedule was off, and just figured I was adapt into that, and my just a little stomach bug would go away. So I came home and was home for about 4 or 5 days, and stomach ache wasn't getting any better. Actually started to get real bad around like that day 4, day 5. And I was having terrible stomach aches, and eventually it got to the point I had a wicked high fever and just crippling stomach aches, and decided it was time to go to the hospital. But 2 days prior to that, I had actually went to an urgent care, and doc told me I was ship shape.
So he assured you that
no
problem.
Yeah, he was like, nope, you look good and everything feels good. You're all set. Come back if you have any further issues. Well, at that point when I was talking with that doctor and he was pushing on my belly, I had a ruptured appendix. So when I went to the hospital, when I started getting the real high fevers and everything, and turned out that that's what it was. I had appendicitis that had ruptured, and we're getting it all squared away. So
Long road to recovery, though.
We're not there yet, but I don't want to focus too much on that. This is the outdoors podcast, but I was keeping you guys informed that I haven't been out. I haven't been getting outside, as we would say on here.
Pathetic.
I know. I'm sorry, but within the next few weeks and next couple of days, I'll be getting out there and being able to get some more content. And we just invested a little more money on some camera gear, so hopefully the YouTube channel will start spicing up as hunting season comes rolling around, and the steelheads start running, lake trout start moving through.
That's another thing it kind of snuck up on us too, like this. The steelhead run's coming up real fast.
Oh yeah, it's right around the corner. So we'll have plenty of content, and hopefully can post some for you guys. What's that, Tom?
I've caught steelhead prior to archery hunting, so it's
We'll have to bring Anthony back
weeks
on.
away.
Doesn't he do some guiding?
and stuff for
Anthony
Steelhead.
is a registered guide for
We should
Pennsylvania.
bring Anthony back on here soon. Talk a little bit of steelhead tactics.
Yeah, for sure.
And if people are looking to book a hunt, or a fishing trip.
Book a fish.
Book a fish.
Yep. You want to book a fish? Anthony's the guy. But actually, we mentioned him quite a few times. And another guy that I went to Alaska with, Hunter Daniels, actually is working
is
on.
he?
Yep, working on getting. He got his guide. Well, he's guided in Alaska, as we've said on the podcast before, and he was actually kind of the key to our success in Alaska when we went up. But yeah, I'm gonna get the name real quick. I think it's HDCR Fishing. You can look them up like on Instagram. And they're just in the beginning of their journey, but getting their company official and all their licenses are still coming in the mail and everything. So once they are completely, solid, you'll be able to look them up, and they'll have a website, and you can book a trip with them. And I'll tell you, I've been fishing with those guys for years, and they catch more fish than anybody on the streams that I know. So anyways, I'll be getting outside, so we'll have that content. But as Tom said earlier, let's get into the trip of a lifetime, really, up to Alaska. Nick mentioned Anthony. I mentioned Hunter and whatnot. The trip was myself, Carter, Hunter, Anthony, and Bailey. So there were 5 of us. And this trip, everything got planned and booked within probably 3 days of having the idea of going to Alaska. And that was maybe 3 months before we went. So we really didn't have a lot of time to decide. And that was, the 3 months was with me, Bailey, and Anthony. And Hunter and Carter decided to come maybe with about a month before their flight actually took off. So it was a real quick planned trip. But started at the top. We really didn't know what to expect, but Hunter Daniels has guided up there and has been going up to Alaska. I think he's on 5 or 6 summers in a row that he's gone to Alaska. So he's spent quite a bit of time up there, and so he kind of, as I said earlier, was our key to success. But we got up there and got our Airbnb and everything settled out. And
Well, back up, because you
I'll-
got off the plane. You're
Yep.
getting ahead of yourself. I
Yeah.
don't want you to
There
try and
is
keep it on a timeline here.
Yeah, there is a key element that I'll throw in. It's not fishing related, but
It's part of the story.
yeah, I'm sure you guys will enjoy this one. So, we get off the plane, and with COVID-19, all of our flights got moved. We weren't riding on the same planes. The 3 of us arrived, 10 hours before the other 2 guys arrived, and it was just a big hassle. But at the end of the day, everyone was getting to Alaska, and we were going to do some fishing. So plane lands, and we go to pick up our rental car. Well, the service that we were renting our rental car through wouldn't accept Anthony's card. So, not to get into too much detail, but they were just said they couldn't accept it. So they said, but you could go to Enterprise. They'll rent you a car. So we wait in line at Enterprise, and we get there, and Enterprise is all sold out of cars. So they're like, oh, but you can go try, this service. It was another one of them, main car rental places.
Hertz, probably.
Yeah, Hertz or Budget or one of them. So I called Hunter, who was sitting at like the Seattle airport getting ready for his plane to come to Anchorage. And I call him, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, well, ran into a little trouble. He's like, what do you mean? You guys landed in Alaska like half hour ago. And I'm like, yeah, well, we don't have a car. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, we already had one. We're like, yeah, we thought we did, but we don't. So I was like, Anthony's waiting in line. He's gonna go talk to this guy at Hertz and see if we can get a car. He's like, all right, well, let me know what's going on. So Anthony finally gets up there and goes to swipe his card, and there was no travel notice put on his card before he came to Alaska. So his card got declined. Like the bank, froze it because it was a out-of-state transaction, and so now Anthony's card doesn't work. I can't use my card.
Probably what that happened was because you had tried it a couple times, like different places.
Yeah, probably.
And what happens, like when, every transaction's in Pennsylvania, and then you try and make 3 of them real fast.
Yeah.
In Alaska, they, like I said, they freeze your account.
Yeah. So the guy was like, I'm sorry, like there's nothing we can do. I couldn't use my card because I'm not 25, and Anthony was the only one that was 25. So we're kind of sitting there like we're ready to, we're on Facebook Marketplace and we're gonna buy a car. No title, no nothing, just buy a car and use it for a week and
leave it at the Airbnb.
Yeah, leave it on the side of the road. Like we're just scrapping. We have no idea what we're gonna do, and a voice from heaven, the guy behind the Hertz counter says, "Hey, I got a buddy." That was all the assurance we needed. When someone's got a buddy, it's good. So kind of felt like Rick Harrison at the pawn shop. Yeah, Rick Harrison at the pawn shop. He's always got a buddy. But so Rick Harrison told us he's got a buddy that he just got off the phone with that would rent us a car for cash. And if you guys know anything about car rentals, you don't really rent in cash because, if you get a flat tire or damage or insurance reasons and whatnot, you got to have a card or some way to pay it off. But anyways, we heard vehicle, cash, good price, and we were sold. So he's like, all right, well, the guy said he'll pick you up in his Jeep and he'll drive you to his car dealership or like the rental service place. And he said he's got a Hummer for you. So in all of our heads, we're thinking like, H1, H2, like yellow Hummer. Now it was I'll get there. So we're all stoked. We're like, we were thinking we were gonna be paying $2,000 for 2 weeks to rent this car, and we just got a Hummer for $950 cash, and like we were stoked. So the guy picks us up in his Jeep, and he's a real friendly guy. Never did learn his name, so we called him Lenny. He looked like a Lenny, So Lenny's car rental came and picked us up and driving us back to the rental place, and he was like, actually, I don't have the Hummer at the rental place. He's like, I actually just got it at my house. I was detailing it for you guys, so we're just gonna go down this little side road here, and it's right in my driveway. So at this point, we're kind of like, okay, this doesn't really feel right. Some guy promised us to rent a car in cash, and now we're not going to a rental place. We're in this dude's car, and he's taking us to his house. But whatever, we're in Alaska, and we're trusting people. So roll up to his house, and sure enough, there's a H3 gray Hummer with the handles ripped off the doors and a shattered windshield and a bullet hole in the tire, and this thing's just looking like just a gem,
But he detailed it for you.
He said he detailed it, but I think there was more dog hair than carpet in the car by the time we got it. But, it was looking good. It was people say, like a 10-foot paint job. This was about like a 50-foot car, like as we rounded the corner, it looked good. But like every foot we got closer, you saw a dent or a hole or a shattered windshield or a lock that was missing off the door. But anyways, we get out of the car, and we got to do paperwork. We're renting a car. There's paperwork involved. So he he gets out his green crayon and his lined paper notebook and brushes off his coffee table, but that's basically what it seemed like. No, he had a piece of paper and a pen and pushed over this is actually true right here. He pushed the goldfish and the Chips Ahoy crackers or Chips Ahoy cookies off the coffee table in his garage, and Anthony, wrote his name and phone number down. That's it on this, piece of paper. And the wife's screaming at the kids in the background, and we pull out our wallets and give this guy $950 in cash and Anthony's name and phone number. And he was like, all right, well, when did you guys plan on bringing this back? And we're like, we're bringing it back on the 16th. And he's like, all right, well, just give me a call later and just let me know when you're going to be bringing it back, and we'll figure it out. I was like, okay. Well, he's like, oh, and one more thing. He's like, we had a guy wire this radio up. He's like, it's an awesome radio, but if you go to use your headlights, something's weird. The subwoofer just turns on. So you got to like flick your lights back and forth and kind of catch it with your headlights on when the subwoofer doesn't turn on. We're like, all right, well, whatever. We just figured, just some funky thing. Well, we're driving home and need to flick on the headlights and.
Well, you gotta back up. He gave you the ignition and everything.
Oh yeah, well
we
didn't realize that yet.
Oh
yeah, we didn't notice that yet. We were just kind of in shock and blinded by all the other things. But anyways, we're driving home or driving to our Airbnb, and we need to turn on the headlights. So Anthony flicks on the headlights and just boom.
Right, you don't have to do that in the mic.
Well, no, they need to hear what I'm talking about. And just god awful noise. And he turns the headlights off, and we're like, Lenny said to flick it a bunch of times, so he's flicking it, and this just subwoofer is just going off, and it's blown. Obviously, it just sounds terrible. And finally, we get the headlights on, with the subwoofer off, and we can't figure out how to turn the actual radio on. Like, the subwoofer would work, but like the radio wouldn't work. Well, anyways, it started to get a little bit colder, so Anthony goes to turn on the fan, like to turn the heat on. The radio kicks on. So the radio was wired into the fan of the Hummer. So you had to have the air on for the radio to be on. And as soon as you would shut the air off, the radio would shut off. Well, we were there in the summertime, and the days would get like 80 degrees. So, you'd want to turn the AC on, but obviously the Hummer didn't have AC. It was just blew all hot air. So you couldn't turn the air on for the AC, but you had no radio unless the air was on. So it was just a great ride. So anyways, we get to our Airbnb, and Anthony, pulls the key out of the ignition and was kind of like looking at it because he said it was a little funky. It was hard to turn and everything. Well, it was like a house key. Like, it wasn't even like a car key, or it didn't say Hummer. It was literally like just a silver house key, and engraved on the house key, like looked like someone scratched it or scribed it on, said white Hummer. We were driving like a charcoal gray Hummer. Well, there was no locks on the doors, like the locks on the outside that you'd normally put your key in were not on the doors. So at this point, we're kind of thinking like this might be stolen. Like, we just signed the paperwork in this dude's garage. He didn't actually take us to his dealership or his rental place. It's got a house key. There's no locks. It says white Hummer on it, and we just paid cash. Like, we're like, but we trusted him and figured that, this is what we needed. We ran 100 different routes to get a car, and this was our last resort. And that's, like we said, that's what we called it. We actually wrote in the dust on the Hummer's window, Lenny's Last Resort Car Rentals. So everybody knew where we got it from. Well, second day in, we're doing this fishing trip, and we were fishing. I think we were fishing the canyon section of the Kenai River, and we drove out into the middle of nowhere and hiked, a couple miles to get down to this spot. And we're fishing, and we're like, you know what? Like, let's keep some fish. Let's eat some dinner tonight. So we roped up some real fresh sockeye salmon and carried them back up. Well, we put them on the stringer, and I'll get to the fishing in more depth after this, but I just want to finish this car story and get it out of the way. But our stringers were breaking, and the fish were falling off our stringers, so we ended up just having to hold them like in nets or in our hands, and we were dripping sweat and just so exhausted. Finally got back up to the car. Anthony goes to start it. Nothing. Battery's dead. We hadn't seen a car all day, and we didn't see a car the entire trip in. No cell service, and we're like, we're toast. Like, we got nothing. We're miles and miles away from, anything remotely close to a town. And I was like, we're gonna spend the night, in the Hummer, in the dirt next to the Hummer. Luckily, like, not 5 minutes after that, a car comes driving down the road. Same thing, shattered windshield, donut spare tire, like trash filled up in the back, smells like weed. And I waved the car down, and, real nice couple was inside, and luckily had jumper cables, jumped our Hummer, and sent us on our way. Well, we get back to the Airbnb, and driving up the driveway, it's a little bumpy. And we parked the car, we're filleting the salmon and everything. And another guy that's at the lodge next to us is like, hey, I think you guys got a flat. And we look over at the tire, and it's, it looks low. Not flat, but pretty low. Well, in about 5 minutes, it went from pretty low to resting on the rim, and the tire, like, popped off the rim. Like, it was draining quick. So, as I said earlier, we had no spare because the spare tire had a hole in it. Looks like somebody shot it. So we call up Lenny's Last Resort Car Rentals and say, hey, we got a flat tire. And he's like, well, that's a problem. I'm like, yeah, it's a real big problem. He's like, well, did you try and put some air in it? We're like, well, it's a little past that. Like, it's off the rim. Like, we watched it drain in a couple seconds. We inspected it. Like, it's all dry rotted, and it's not going to hold air. And he's like, wow. He's like, that's a problem. Well, you could put the spare on. And we're like, the spare's got a bullet hole in it. And he's like, whoa, the last people I rented it to must have done that and not told me about it. He's like, that's a problem. And he just kept saying, that's a problem. We're like, yeah, we know it's a problem. He's like, well,
That's why we're on the phone with you right now, actually.
He's like, well, you could just try and put some air in it. And we're like, okay, first off, we don't have any air. We're at our Airbnb right now. He's like,
Wait,
well,
you're at an Airbnb and you have no air.
Air, yeah, okay, funny play on words. That was a bad pun. So, anyways, we're still on the phone with him. He's like, well, could you like go and get like a portable air compressor? We're like, no, we can't go anywhere. Like, the only vehicle we have is this Hummer, and it's got a flat. Like, there's nothing we can do. And he's like, oh, that's a problem. So he's like, you know what? He's like, I can come out tonight. He's like, I can bring you a jack, a tire iron, and 2 tires, one for your spare and one for the flat that you got. And he's like, I'll just come at night. He's like, there's less cars on the road, and I can drive fast. I was like, okay. He's like, I'll be there at like 2 a.m. We're like, what? Like, Just come at at a reasonable time so you don't got to be here.
I have
at
not heard
two-
that part of the
yeah,
story.
2 in the morning because there's less cars on the road and you can drive fast. So at this point, we're all making jokes like, we just wait until dark so we can go to Walmart and throw some guy's Hummer up on jack stands and snag 2 tires off of it or something. So, it was like 1 in the morning. I was dead tired. So I was like, I'm going to bed,
But
you guys,
Lenny's coming at 2.
Yeah, but you guys can stay up and wait for Lenny. I didn't have to stay up for that show. So, around, 1:30, Anthony's like, yeah, I better get a hold of him, text him, make sure he's on his way. Texted him and nothing. Just nothing. He's like, oh, maybe he just doesn't want to text
Maybe he's
and drive.
he's on his way.
Yeah, he doesn't want to text and drive. He'll be here at 2. 2:10. 2:15, 2:30 rolls around. You know what? Let's we'll go to bed. If we wake up in the morning and there's a new tire on and the spare's changed, great. We wake up about 6, 7 in the morning, still got that flat.
That's perfect.
Get Lenny on the horn. Where were you last night? Yeah, I tried calling all the tire shops and all the this is word for word what he said. He said all the tire shops are closed on the weekend. I called them and they said they made too much money during the week that they decided to close for the weekend. And we're like,
You're full of shit.
They said they made too much money, so they had to close for the weekend. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, your math's not adding up here, buddy. And he's like, yeah, well, what size tires are they? Like, you said you were bringing them last night and you didn't even know, like we figured, he had it on file or something. So I get down and I read off the size of the tire to him and everything.
So
He's
he
like,
had absolutely no intentions of showing up last night.
Absolutely none. And, I don't know why he told us he'd be there at 2 in the morning if, whatever. So finally, he said, I got 2 brand new tires and they're on the original Hummer rims. And he's like, I'm leaving right now. I'm in the car. I'll be there in 3 hours. So, because he was located in Anchorage. We're in Soldotna. So we're like, all right, just hurry up. And, 2 hours rolls around. We're like, call him. Like,
let's just make sure he's on the road.
Yeah, call him. So we call him. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm about an hour and a half out. So
reasonable.
It should have been about an hour, but we figured, he said he was on his way, and about a half hour later actually left. So anyways, about an hour and a half out. We're like, okay, perfect. We'll see you in a bit. Finally, we see the Jeep, roll up the driveway, and it's Lenny, and he gets out and he's like, oh man. He's like, yeah. He's like, that is flat. We're like, we tried telling you on the phone, like it's flat. He's like, yeah, you guys weren't kidding. He's like, well, I got the 2 tires in the back and I brought the jack and the iron so we can change them out. Okay, like,
let's get to it.
Get the tires out of the Jeep. He's like, oh, okay, yeah. So he goes and opens up the back and literally like rolls the tire like right in front of the other tire, like a good tire. And he's like, oh yeah. He's like, they're the same size. He's like, perfect. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I told you the size of the tire like on the phone and everything. He's like, oh, they're same rims and everything. Like, these are perfect. We're like, so you just guessed and just happened that.
Where did he get these tires and rims?
He never told us. He said they were brand new. The one was pretty much completely bald, and the other one was a decent tire. Wasn't brand new, but it was decent. No dry rot or anything. Had some good tread. By no means brand new, but the other one was like dry rotted and flat. So we're like, well, let's just forget about the tire shops closing because they made too much money and the 2 in the morning drive, and let's get to the chase. He stole these. So we're like, okay, Lenny, if you're recalling this story and listening to this, you're a great guy, but it was just a funny story that we made up for entertainment. So, anyways, we're like, it's this Jeep or this Hummer stolen. These tires are stolen. Like, this is great. So, gets them put on, and this dude, I don't think's ever changed a tire in his life. And he jacks it up, and he's going to put the jack on the exhaust and plastic and just everything underneath. And we're like, we'll change the tire. We got this. Jacked up the car, threw the tire on, lowered it, and Lenny's tightening the tires up, and we're not feeling too confident, or the lug nuts, and we're not feeling too confident with his abilities. So we're like, you know what, like, you want to just leave the jack and the tire iron with us. That way, if for some reason we get another flat, we can take the spare off and change it. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, and just bring it back, whenever you guys get back. So we're like, all right. Well, he leaves, and our buddy Carter's like, I'm gonna go test those lug nuts to make sure they're on. Well, he, on every single lug nut, got probably another like full rotation or two out of all the lug nuts. So we're like, okay, well, at least we know.
So they were like barely hand tight.
Yeah. Like you could have tightened them about that tight with a screwdriver, and he had a big T tire iron. So, anyways, batteries working good.
Subwoofers are hitting hard.
All four tires, yeah. Subwoofers are working with the headlights, and radio's jamming when you got the fan on, and windshield's cracking worse by the day. So, anyways, rest of the trip ran real smooth, and I'll get back to you with the end of the return when we go to return the Hummer at the end of the podcast. So you'll have to stay tuned to hear how the return process goes. But I figured I bored you enough with the Hummer story. We're gonna get on to fishing.
Luke's giving out Hummers.
Yep. So we didn't know what to expect really, with conditions and COVID and population, like how many people were going to be up there. We weren't getting real good reports on numbers of fish running, so we really weren't sure we were going to be trout fishing, salmon fishing, what kind of numbers of fish, what types of salmon, we're pushing through. So we were just kind of winging it. And first night we were there, we decided to go to a nice trout stream that had a couple salmon in there, but they were pretty colored up and spawned out. I don't know. Did you guys hit any creeks, Tom, when you were there that had a good mix of trout and salmon, or was it basically you were trout fishing or salmon fishing?
No, the section of the Kenai we were on had a pretty good mix of rainbows and salmon.
Yeah, so that's the section we were fishing. We weren't on the Kenai, actually. I forget what the stream was called. Maybe we'll have Hunter on the podcast, and he can maybe even recap with you. And I don't want to give away too many of his secrets, but it was a smaller stream, feeder stream, and we were trout fishing, and I did all right for my first day. Fishing in Alaska, I caught, I don't know, a couple rainbows, maybe some dollies, and I don't think I caught any salmon the first day. A couple of the other guys did, but we got our rods wet the first day, and it was good. Had to knock the rust off. None of us had fly fished in a couple months. So we just had to get everything going, and that was a good first day. Everybody caught a couple fish. We didn't kill them, but it was a good day. So we actually got back to the Airbnb, did some talking with some of the local guys, and now we actually had a plan together of what we were gonna do. So we decided, let's get some meat. We need to eat. We need to get some meat in the freezer. So we were gonna do some salmon fishing. Well, we went to the lower section of the Kenai and did our salmon fishing there primarily. So we're getting our rods rigged up and everything, and tying up some streamers and whatnot. And there were still trout in the streams, because all the salmon are spawning, so you could catch those. But usually Carter packed one rod, Anthony packed one rod, Bailey packed one rod, I packed one or two rods, and Hunter packed about 6. So he was pretty much set for everything. Like I said earlier, he was the guide, so he basically had, anything. If you wanted to catch a fish in that stream, he could target it specifically with a perfect setup. But we get down there and start salmon fishing, and I figured it was going to be a lot like, steelhead up here, where, you just make a few drifts, and, when the school moves through, you'll run into one and catch one. Well, we get down there, and there's guys chucking 4 ounces of lead and size 2 circle hooks. We're like, what the heck is, what are they doing, Well, as Tom said earlier, the technique is called flossing, where you just basically have a big weight, and because the salmon aren't feeding, you have to basically get your line caught in their open mouth, because they're kind of filtering water through. As their mouth's opening and closing, you get your line caught in their mouth, and you feel them shaking, and then you set the hook, and your line slides through their mouth, and, you get a clean hook up right in the mouth. So after, we did that, and we checked the legitimacy of it and everything, and it's the legal technique of fishing in Alaska. Like, it's a big food source. Everyone's, up there getting their salmon. You pay big dollars for it in the store, and if you're there, might as well get it for free. So we were doing that, and finally got our rig set up for flossing salmon. And I'll tell you what, once we got the setup down and the technique and how to do it and everything, it was game over for those salmon in the streams. We had multiple times where 4 or 5 of us were all hooked up on fish at, the same time, fighting, anywhere from 8 to 15 pound salmon. And it was just unreal. Every day after that, no matter where we went, if there were salmon in the river and you could legally target them, we were crushing them. It was just slam fest. But it was a lot of fun, fighting those big, powerful fish. And I do have a couple videos of them. So I don't have a ton of good content, to make a huge Alaska trip video, but I do have some clips and stuff, so maybe I could
we
put
can do short little
a little
videos on
montage
Insta
together or something, and just show you guys how pretty the water is. It's like a bluish green, and just the land and the fish and everything was just beautiful. So we can post some little clips and whatnot to show you guys that. But it's fun, and as good of a fight as those salmon put up and how great tasting they were and everything. Bailey and Carter were basically the chefs of the trip, and cooked all the high prize meals. So that was nice to have 2 people in the kitchen that actually knew how to make some good meals.
Are they pretty good cooks?
Bailey, he's just self-taught. He's real big into fitness and everything, and just loves food. The guy just loves eating. So, he makes a pretty good meal. And Carter is, I want to say, I don't know if it was not an owner, but a manager. A manager at a restaurant near. I forget what restaurant it is. So
Applebee's?
No, Applebee's has rats. But so he knows his way around a kitchen and just from cooking. But so we had a good variety. Most people up in Alaska, they're eating PB&J and Spam and salmon, but we had salmon and what's the chicken parmesan and garlic bread, and every meal we had was we had pierogies, and just we had good meals while we were up there. So
yeah, you do it a little different than how we do our hunting trips. I ate pickled sausage and
Vienna sausages in the little cups.
Yeah, we don't eat nearly as good. We did some dough tacos and
Yeah, no, we did it right. We had spaghetti and meatballs, and then
That's pretty sweet, actually.
yeah, then we ate like kings. I'm trying to think of some of the other meals we had. We did have a couple nights, where we just had some oven pizzas and threw them in. But I mean, we were there for 2 weeks, so we couldn't really, afford to do that. Like I cooked burgers one night, Angus beef burgers. So, we ate good. But anyways, my favorite part of this trip, and I think what anybody who takes a trip up to Alaska, if you do, go catch the salmon. It's great. It's fun. They fight hard. It's fun to learn, but they're great tasting. You get a lot of meat off of them. But if you go to Alaska, try and figure out where you can go and trout fish, because that was my favorite part of the whole trip was trout fishing. Just because like the angler I am, I like having people are gonna get mad because flossing is a legitimate hookup, but I like the fish actually attacking and eating my bait. Like when you can tie a fly or
Well, you were tying flies at the camp,
yeah,
right?
we did. Well, yes and no. We did tie our sockeye flies, our floss and flies, which was basically a big old hook with a piece of yarn tied around the top. We really strung those up good, but no, we did tie some trout flies and everything. And actually, the biggest success, and I've said it multiple times, the key to our success and what caught the most fish was actually Hunter Daniels' custom beads. His custom beads that he makes outproduced everything that we had, the bait shops had, the guides had, everybody that was on the river, even the guides that had clients on the river, we were out fishing them. And it was on Hunter's beads. And so what we did was we would find a river that we knew had spawning salmon in it. Well, that Hunter knew had spawning salmon in it. We all just kind of followed his lead. But, and you would go and just start, down low and just walk it, and just walk for miles and miles and just cover tons of ground. We fished all day. Well, some days that we got up in the morning, but we fished from the time we woke up in the morning until dark. So, a lot of times the water that we were fishing was super clear. So we were using light line, which made it fun because you really had to play the fish. But you also just had to be stealthy. You couldn't just be marching up the stream and, smacking your line in the water. So there was a lot of, what I liked about it was, the actual skill involved in catching the fish. And it wasn't like the salmon, where it was just kind of dumb luck or, there is skill. There is definitely skill involved in flossing salmon. It's definitely more difficult than you'd think just snagging a fish, but to actually get a legitimate, fair, legal, sportsmanlike hookup, it does take a little bit of skill. But the trout fishing was actually like more fishing than I would just say snagging. But there were deep holes where you couldn't see bottom. It was 8-9 feet, and that's usually like big falling down tree where the real big fish were sitting, and a lot of times broke us off. I remember a time Hunter had this dolly Varden on that was, oh my gosh, this thing, it was probably 26 inches, every bit of like 8 pounds. Like this thing was just, when you think dolly Varden, you don't think that big, but this thing was just a horse. It might even have been 10 pounds. I don't know. We didn't get a crazy good look at it, but it looked like our steelhead up here, like a big steelhead sitting in the water. But he, was sitting in a real slow, deep hole, and Hunter threw a bead, and usually like in the shallower water, the smaller fish, would dart and really aggressively hit it. And this thing just kind of slowly just swam across the hole and just sucked up Hunter's bead, and Hunter set the hook, and this thing took off and shot out of the water, actually jumped over a pine tree, looped him around, and finally broke him off. And, that was the last we saw of that fish, but I was, standing right next to him and watched it happen. And just, those moments like that were just phenomenal. And it was kind of cool. Like I said, it looked like a steelhead sitting in the water. That trout fishing, you used almost the same tactics that you used to catch trout and steelhead, in Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio. If you go out west, Montana, the same techniques you use will catch the same fish in Alaska. You might have to change up your fly a little bit, or your drift, or how you present it, or your line. But overall, they're trout. They're just all the same. But I don't know. Was that your experience, Tom? I know because you went up with Hunter before I ever did. And this was, really before Hunter was, into his guiding and everything. But was the trout fishing, good up there? Or were you guys mainly focused on the salmon?
The only trout fishing we did was we got a guided trip one day. We did a float down the Kenai, and we did trout fishing then, and we crushed rainbow trout. But that was really the extent of our trout fishing. Other than that, we were pretty much sockeye salmon fishing the whole time, just the old flossing technique.
Yeah.
And it worked really well.
Yeah, it produces a lot of fish. But yeah, so I mean, how big were the rainbows that you guys were catching? Were they that stock trout size, that around that anywhere from 8 to 14 inches?
Yeah. Hunter did catch a really big one that was probably 20 inches.
Nice.
Which that's a big rainbow trout.
Yeah, that's real big. And that's the first time me or you has ever caught a native rainbow. I mean, we get our steelhead and stuff, but in Pennsylvania, where we're at, any rainbow trout is stocked. There's no native rainbows in the streams around us. I mean, there might be somewhere, somebody might, call me out and say there is in Pennsylvania. But I mean, I know native brown trout everywhere, but I don't really know of a whole lot of native rainbows, But anyway, so I thought that was really cool. And the rainbows fight, even when you catch, those 12, 13-inch rainbows, they're pulling. Like, they're strong fish. So
yeah, especially if you have like a 3 or 4 weight fly rod.
Oh yeah, they rip you around.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're out there with a 8 weight, 9 weight catching 13-inch or smaller trout, but if you have a setup for trout, then it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, Hunter took us to a spot where it was, real deep. You couldn't fish for them, but there were a bunch of kings moving through, and we were watching the king salmon, shoot out of the water, and just porpoise surface at the top, and it was just the scenery was just amazing. We were sitting there fishing, the edge that was only a couple feet deep, but you'd look out in front of you and see a 60, 70 pound king salmon. It was just unreal. But Hunter did dump a absolute toad rainbow while we were fishing the canyon section of the Kenai. Just a ungodly sized rainbow trout, like something you'd see in a magazine or something, or caught out of the hydro canals in New Zealand. I mean, it wasn't quite that 30-pound range, but it was a big fish, the biggest rainbow we had seen or hooked into all weekend, or all the 2 weeks we were there. But anyways, back to the trout fishing. It was like I was saying, how it was very similar to what we do up here. I just couldn't believe that we were walking these tiny streams with completely overgrown and trees on both sides, and there's brown bears, or grizzlies, and they're feeding on the salmon, and you're seeing bear tracks, and you look up and the bear's 20 yards in front of you, and moose tracks, and just an absolute unreal experience. And the trout fishing, like anybody could do it. You know, if you're physically capable, your body's capable of walking, you know, through the streams, you can catch fish. Like, it's just unbelievable. And like I said, there's some skill involved, and you have to use the right equipment and everything, but it's very adaptable for anybody to do it.
So, obviously, your favorite part was the trout fishing. Do you
Yeah.
have like a least favorite part? Maybe not necessarily something you didn't, or maybe is there anything you didn't like about Alaska or the fishing up there?
The only thing that I was kind of like a little, like, I don't want to say didn't like, but, you know, I had this, you know, vision in my head, like Alaska, like untouched land, in which there, you know, I mean, now anymore, there's, you know,
Very little untouched land.
I know people are going to argue it and say that there's so much we don't know about Alaska. There's, you know, but our Uncle Frank, who's been guiding in Alaska for how many years?
20
years. And knows everybody who's gone up there. He's like, the most remote places you can only access by plane, and then that you can't access by plane, that you got to get to by boat and then by foot. He's like, Alaska's been covered. Like, there's, people don't think it and people argue it and everything, but Alaska's been covered. There's been people up there for a lot of years now, hunting and fishing and traveling and literally just doing what I just said, traveling and exploring Alaska. But so I had, you know, that vision of, you know, fresh, preserved, would you call it, Tom, the last frontier, like untouched land. And when we landed in Anchorage, it was kind of sad. There were a lot of homeless people, you know, sleeping on the streets, a lot of people doing drugs, like OD'd on the streets, and just a big city, you know. And it just kind of, like, when we got off the plane,
That was your first experience in Alaska,
I was
huh?
like, this doesn't, I was like, this feels like I'm like in a bad part of Erie or Pittsburgh or something, you know. And I was like, this, you know, it's not Alaska. You'd look at the horizon and, you know, instead of seeing Lake Erie, you know, you saw mountains, which was really cool, but it just, you know, it didn't seem like I was in Alaska. Well, once we rented our Jeep or our Hummer from Lenny and actually drove to Soldotna where we were staying, that's when, you know, it felt like Alaska. It felt like I was in Alaska, you know, driving through, seeing moose on the side of the road and bear and bald eagles everywhere, and big mountains and like blue water, and we saw the ocean, and we fished a stream that was literally like, I was looking at the ocean. I walked down and was fishing, you know, 100 yards upstream from the mouth of the ocean, you know. So that was really cool. We were catching salmon that were swimming out in the Pacific a couple minutes, you know, before they were on the end of our line. So that was cool to actually, those salmon where we were catching them in the mouth, or like at the mouth of the creek, those salmon were still aggressive and hitting baits. So that was really cool.
So after your first experience in Alaska, I would imagine you plan to go back eventually. What would you do differently going again?
I wouldn't rent a Hummer from Lenny is probably where I'd start.
That's one of the top ones.
Yeah. But no, I mean, you know, there wasn't a whole lot that, you know, like I wish I didn't do this or I would have done this different. It's just that
You just want more time there?
Not even. There's just so much to do in Alaska. Like most vacations, people go, you know, 5 days a week. We went for 2 weeks. We were there for a long time, and we didn't even, you know, Hunter's been going up there for 6 summers in a row, like months. He'd go up there for, you know, 3 months to guide, and he's been doing it for 6 years, you know, and he hasn't even scratched the surface, you know, the rivers and the places you can go and the fish you can catch. And, you know, we did this hike that was maybe a 2-hour hike up this mountain, and we get to the top of the mountain and there's a big valley with a lake in the middle of the 2 mountains, you know, like just the prettiest, like most pristine water you could imagine. You know, trout jumping out for dragonflies that are flying over, whatever type of bugs are up in Alaska, I don't even know. But just like something you'd see in a movie, like just beautiful. So, I mean, not that, like you said, yeah, I do want to go back, and not that I would do it different, but just do different things. You know what I mean? Like not
Don't go to the same place.
Yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't something like I wish.
It's not that you didn't like
yeah,
where you were at, but you
Yeah.
want to see something else.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I want to see what else Alaska has to offer, because there's just, it's huge. It's like half the size of the United States, you know, like, and people don't realize how big Alaska is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it might not be quite half, but it's big. People are like, oh, it's like the size of Texas. No, it's a lot bigger than that. It's huge.
Yeah.
So huge state.
Yeah.
But I mean, I know you're more geared towards hunting. I don't know if you ever had any desire to, you know, moose hunt or go to Alaska or anything.
I told Frank once he gets his official guide license, I'm gonna be his first client. He's gonna take me on a black bear hunt.
Okay, all right. Now you've never been there, so you're kind of, you know, you heard stories from your two younger brothers, like they went to Alaska, so you're probably like, yeah, I want to see what this is about. Now, Tom, would you ever go back?
I plan on it.
When? And for fishing, for hunting, what do you want to do? Because you didn't do any hunting, did you? You just did fishing.
I want to go up for a hunt. I don't know. Probably moose hunt.
I was gonna say, what do you want to target?
Definitely moose. Gonna have to start saving now though.
Yeah, you might be saving for a couple years.
I just wouldn't even bother saving. Just start buying lottery tickets.
That's, you know, I thought about that.
We should just all put all of our money into a pile, buy lottery tickets, split the winnings.
You know what? Let's
You got a 50-50
we'll-
shot at hitting the Powerball.
you either win or you don't. There's two options. It's clear cut, 50% chance. But, you know, it's not a bad idea, you know. Well, you know, we'll make a post on Instagram, not really, but I'm gonna say we'll make a GoFundMe. You guys can donate to our lottery fund. All the proceeds go to Pennsylvania Lottery, benefiting older Americans or older Pennsylvanians every day.
Yeah. Well,
anyways, but just to give you guys like one little last like recap.
well, I guess before you go ahead and give your recap, and then, you know, since you're like a frequent guest / host almost, but we'll let you close it out. So go ahead and give your final remarks on it.
I want to hear the end of this Jeep story or Hummer story.
Oh no, we're getting there. We're getting there.
I've been thinking about it.
And I know everyone listening has been too. But anyways, like just to, you know, give you guys some information, like I know they do the write it in pens on here and whatnot, and it's not really a write it in pen. It's just kind of
write it in pencil.
You know, just tuck it in your brain, and it's just something like I'm just giving you some information here so you can take away something and walk away a little smarter after hearing this. But so, you know, our big tactic, like I said, I don't want to go burn spots and techniques and special tricks, but basically, I mean, if you know steelhead fishing up here, you know, people fish streamers, you know, different types of flies. People fish beads, you know. A lot of Alaska, we weren't allowed to use like bait. Like you couldn't use live bait, like minnows. You weren't allowed to use eggs or like egg sacs or skein or anything. So it was all artificial. So, you know, if you fish artificial up here, you know, you got your beads, your streamers, your different flies. All that type of stuff, you know, is gonna work, you know, in Alaska. Like fishing up here, why do you use a minnow? Well, there's minnows in the streams. Why do you use a white streamer? Well, it looks like one of the minnows in the streams if you just want to fish artificial. Why do you use a bead? Well, it looks like the eggs coming out of the fish. Why do you use, you know, a stonefly? Well, if you flip over a rock, there's stoneflies under the rocks. You know, like it makes sense what you use. You know, you use stuff that the fish are used to seeing. And I mean, there is some stuff, like look at a crystal meth fly. Like, what does that look like? I mean, maybe like an orange one might look a little bit like a piece of skein or an egg or something, but like a chartreuse, like a lime green crystal meth fly, that doesn't really look like anything, but the fish still hit it. Like, you know, it's just
Still gonna send it.
they still send it, you know. But so there's so many like different things that, the steelhead around here will eat and whatnot. And it's the same thing in Alaska. If you go up there and you go to any stream that, has salmon in it, what are those trout eating? Well, they're probably eating the salmon eggs. The salmon are dying and rotting. Flesh flies, you hear that all the time. People fishing with flesh flies. Just looks like a chunk of flesh. That's what the trout are eating. They adapted into carnivores. Any of the bugs, any of the hatches that are going on in Alaska, you throw, a fly that looks like, some of those bugs, you're going to catch those fish. And just if you book that trip, any place that you see that has, we were fishing the Kenai Peninsula, and every stretch of water that we went to, every stretch of it had trout in it, salmon, or both. Like, it was just unreal how many fish were up there and how much water there was to fish, and the fish weren't pressured, and it was just unbelievable. So, if you took anything away from that, that's kind of the strategy we used. We waited just walked and fished the whole way. Just cast your line's always in the water, because even if you can't see them, they're still in there. But anyway, so we wrapped up our last day and had to go catch our plane, and figured we'd give Lenny a call and tell him we're going to return his Hummer. So we called Lenny and said, hey, we're heading back tomorrow, so we're going to, bring the Hummer back. So if you picked us up from the airport, and when he did that, he told us that he would give us a ride back to the airport after we dropped off the Hummer. So we're like, we got to be at the airport by, 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever. So, we'll drop the Hummer off around 4. If you could, give us a ride to the airport, that'd be perfect. He's like, oh yeah. He's like, just give me a call, when you're getting close to Anchorage. So we're like, all right. So, we packed up all of our stuff in the Hummer, and we're driving back, and, we start getting close, and we give Lenny a call, and we're like, hey, where do you want us to meet you at? Where's your rental place at? And he's like, I'm not actually going to have you meet me at the rental. He's like, I'm going to have you meet across the street from the Subway. We're like,
This rental doesn't even exist.
Yeah, I'm like, this guy's got no rental business. He's got nothing,
And it took you till now to realize
Oh,
that?
no, we made jokes about it the whole time, but every time we talked to him, we just confirmed our statements were 100% valid. So we're like, all right, whatever. He's like, yeah. He's like, I'll see you there. He's like, just give me a call when you're pulling up. So we're like, okay. Give him a call. Hey, we're gonna be there in 5 minutes. He's like, actually, he's like, I'm not there. He's like, my mechanic's there. He's gonna take the Hummer, and he's gonna give you guys a ride to the airport. Like, oh, geez. Okay, sounds good. So we're pulling up, and I don't know, like, the most accurate way I can describe who picked us up. If you've ever watched Fast and Furious, and the guy Hector on there, I'm pretty sure it was the same guy. Hector picked us up, and gets into the car, and he's like, hey, do you have room for my stuff? We're like, what? No, we're in a, Hummers are big, but there's not a lot of storage in them. We're like, we got, 5 suitcases, 5 carry-ons, 5 everything, our fishing poles and everything. Like, we don't really have room for yours. Like, what's your stuff? You're just taking us to the airport. And he's like, well, this, one of our clients has a flat tire. So, we just started laughing at that point. We're like, yes, this is a reoccurring thing with you guys. And he's like, I'm going to bring my stuff. And he's like, and drive out there to change
Tonight
the tire.
At 2 a.m.
Yeah. And so we're like, wait, hold on. Like, your stuff, like what's your stuff? We look over, and he's got like a case of water, some beer, like some toilet paper, and like that's
not
his,
car changing.
that's his stuff. that he needs to bring. So we're like, yeah, sure. You know what? Like, set it on our laps. Like, we'll carry it. Now, mind you, this is a 5-seat vehicle. We had 5 guys in it. Now we got 6 because this dude is driving us to the airport with all of our luggage. So, and we didn't have enough room for all the luggage, so we had to rent a U-Haul, okay? So that's how much, completely forgot that whole part of the story. So we had a U-Haul that we had to return before returning the car. So we had to pack all of our stuff out of the U-Haul back into the huge mess. Like, the Hummer was just packed. So we were laying on top of each other, had bags on our laps, like, just absolutely awful. Never do it again. So anyways, we're driving to the airport, and this dude, he's starting to sketch us out a little bit, you know. Like, not to judge anybody, but, you know, he's got, like, some tattoos and just kind of, you know, the way he's talking, just, you know, I felt a little uneasy. And not just his, like, who he was, but just the whole situation that we were in, you know. Not knowing this guy, saying Lenny was going to pick us up, and now he's not his mechanic is, not actually at a dealership. We think the car's stolen. Just a whole bunch of stuff was kind of like throwing red flags for us. And then he starts talking about, you know, like how the cops don't like him. And because we passed a cop and he hates cops and he doesn't get along with cops. And, you know, the time he did in jail, and the only thing to do in Alaska is to drink and beat your wife. Like, these are his words. So we're, like, you know, on edge. And he tells us that he's not actually going to change a flat tire. He just likes one of his clients that's renting one of their cars, and he's going to go spend the night there, and that Lenny's going to be real mad when he doesn't show up for work in the morning or come back that night. So we're like, just please get us to the airport so we can get out of this car. And finally, you know, we unload and we're at the airport. You know, we're wiped our hands clean of that car. You know, oh, and I forgot. We were talking, like, joking, like, what do we do, like, if we get pulled over right now? Like, how do we verify this? We look in the glove box. There's nothing. I'm saying nothing. There's not a manual. There's no registration. There's no title. Like, there's not even a napkin to blow your nose. There is absolutely nothing.
So that was the detail.
Yeah, like, yeah. He had to take the papers out of the glove box. No, there was nothing in this car, and, like, so, you know.
And you didn't even actually have the real guy's name from who you rented the vehicle from.
I think when his mechanic picked us up, we did get his name because he said blank is going to be, like, real mad when I don't show up for work tomorrow. And I just can't remember what it was. Yeah, jeez. If it comes to me, you know, I'll say it. But I do remember hearing it. But we just went with Lenny, and that's what we still call him is Lenny. But, you know, that was... You know, if you go to Alaska and you get off at the Anchorage airport, go to the Hertz car dealership and ask the guy for his buddy. And, you know, he'll hook you up right. Hopefully you get that gray Hummer because it treated us well and it'll sure treat you well. But, I mean, there's not, you know, people say, like, a picture doesn't do it justice. Like, you know, me talking about the trip, you know, can't do a justice for what the trip actually was. All I gotta say is, like, if you really, like, enjoy the outdoors or, you know, hunting or fishing or whatever, like, you have to go and see it. Like, it's not like just going to another state or on a vacation. It's like going to a whole other world. You feel completely unplugged and disconnected, and it's awesome. But that's about it for me. I mean, do you got any other questions, Tom? You know, like, I know you went up there and fished. Is there anything that, like, you wondered?
Did you guys ever make it over to the Bird Creek?
Yeah, we fished Bird a couple times.
Catch any pinks out of there?
Not. I mean, we might have. I'm I'm not sure, because some of the streams were closed to salmon fishing at certain times, and so like I said, I mean, we fished Anchor, we fished Bird, we fished Quartz, we fished the Kenai, we fished a bunch of places, but I'm not exactly sure like which places were what, but I do remember this is one we stayed in Soldaten at this Airbnb, and it took us like 2 or 3 nights to realize that we had access to like the Kenai River, like a big fishing section, like 5 minutes from our Airbnb. So we found ourselves there every night, catching salmon. Like we'd literally get back from our day-long trip fishing, and then we'd go down there. Like we'd catch trout all day, and then go right behind our Airbnb and floss salmon and catch dinner for the night, and that was fun. But we did fish Bird, and I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, I can't say for sure, what fish I caught out of what streams. If we had Hunter on here, I mean, he could tell you, what section of it and how many feet you were away from the access. But other than that, I mean, do you have anything, Nick? I mean, I know you're not, huge into fishing, but.
No, you covered everything I could have asked.
But. I mean, other than that, I mean, like I said, I'm getting healed up and gonna be back on the streams. So, like I said earlier, I wasn't getting outside, but now that I am getting outside, I feel entitled. And if Nick will let me sign us off here,
yeah, go for it, buddy.
I'd like to tell you now that I'm not being a hypocrite, that I'm actually out there. So. I'll tell you guys that this is the White Cat Outdoors team, signing off, and I want you all to get outside.